Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today I have Krista Neher with us. Krista is a 6-time best-selling author, international speaker, award-winning entrepreneur, and the CEO of Bootcamp Digital. She wrote the first textbook on social media and created the first accredited program. She's passionate about helping businesses grow their results by increasing their digital knowledge. Krista, it's so great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. A pleasure to be here.
So we've known each other for many years, decades, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, and you were one of the early kind of pioneers in the area of social media and leveraging it from a marketing standpoint. How has social media changed in ways that are important for our listener to know over the time that you have been involved?
Yeah, so, it's kind of funny, right? They say like the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I feel like in social media, there's this expectation that things are constantly changing so fast. No one could stay up to date, right? But what's interesting is the first book I wrote was on social media, and it's now well over 10 years old. And when I was doing the second edition, I went to updated it. It was like 8 years old at this point or something. And what amazed me is that most of the stuff wasn't that different. Like if you step back, the way Twitter basically works is the same. The way Facebook basically works is the same. But here's what has changed. I think what's really changed everything is the algorithms and the artificial intelligence and the competition. And that's what I think people underestimate is the importance of great content, because it just has become so much more competitive to earn people's attention.
And when you're talking about earning their attention, you're not talking about paying for it with advertising, are you? Or are you talking about both advertising and editor, or like the organic side of it?
Yeah, I mean, it really is both. And it's actually not even just social media for that matter, but almost everything is algorithm driven. And now the artificial intelligence and machine learning get smarter. But I think one of the mistakes people make is they say, okay, my organic reach isn't great. I'll just boost it with an ad. But even if you run an ad, one of the elements of your deliverability on almost every ad platform is quality score. And they just call it different things. Facebook used to call it relevance score. Now I think it's quality rate ranking or something like that. But Google has this on all of their ads. And essentially, what you end up paying is linked to how relevant people find your ad. So if you want your ad to be seen for a lower cost, even then your content matters. But, really, if you can layer back for a second, more importantly, is that even if you run an ad, all that ad does is it guarantees you a spot in this feed that I'm scrolling through super fast. It does not guarantee any level of attention. So you still have to earn that attention, even if you run an ad or you've paid for me to like skip it as fast as humanly possible, which probably doesn't link well to whatever your business goals were for running that ad anyways.
Yeah, so earning attention is critically important. In fact, isn't there a book by the name The Attention Economy or something like that, I think?
Probably.
Yeah, so it should be if it isn't already. So earning attention, what does that look like from a practical standpoint on a day in, day out basis for our listener, for the business owner or the marketer, the consultant who's listening? What do they need to do each day?
So I think the first thing, and like digital has made this fresh again, but it's been around forever, is like you need to understand your customers at a deeper level and get better at creating stuff that speaks to them in a meaningful way. So when we do content workshops, one of the examples that I always like to use is, that Snickers hangry campaign, like you're not yourself when you're hungry, right? Okay, so how do they get to that campaign, right? It starts with, okay, we're a chocolate bar company. Well, why do people eat chocolate bars? Because they're hungry. So if they had just stopped there, which is where almost all of us stop with like the depth of our ideas, it would just be like, eat this, you're hungry, eat this, you're hungry. That's not meaningful, right? Instead, it's like, okay, but hungry when? Like, why would you eat this instead of a bowl of spaghetti, right? Well, you have a Snickers for a snack, not a real meal. Okay, great. Well, why is it different from all the other snacks you can have? Okay, it's heavier. So now we have our unique selling proposition, great, and our sort of consumption moment. Okay, well, what are the reasons it matters that you have a heavy snack when you're hungry? Because you get angry and act like a totally insane human. So then you have like an actual insight, right? And I think because of the speed of content on social media, we feel like we have to put so much stuff out. We don't do a good enough job of making the content at just like a conceptual level very interesting. Like, I'm sorry, but like Merry Christmas from every business in the world is not very interesting to people, right? What is it about that holiday that has relevance to your business? And then you can make some kind of a meaningful connection. But where I see is like, so the starting point of why our content isn't often good enough is there's no like, oftentimes it doesn't have a real idea, right? If you've ever read Simon Sinek, he talks about what you do, how you do it, and why you do it, those three circles. And it's a little bit, and his point is, no one cares about really what you do, how you do. It's a little interesting, but it's why. And the same is a little true with your content. If you can't get deeper, then, well, like even if I think of myself, we do digital marketing training. If all we can say is like, come and get our training because it's great. Come and get our training because you get certified. That's not really something that is playing to a need or a benefit of people. So I think the first starting point of great content is really that side, right? Then I think you have, okay, now we need it to be a message that travels well in digital. So it needs to be like short, entertaining, or interesting, or emotional, and like kind of bite-sized. And then the third step is it needs to be optimized for digital, right? So I always think video is the best example here, because if you look at a food video, what does a food video start with on Facebook? Food video starts with like, OMG, don't you want to make this totally amazing thing, right? And that's why somebody watches the food video, because you start with the end result. In traditional video, we do the opposite, right? It starts with like, oh, my kids are so hungry. What am I going to do? So we really need to think about like quick value for the audience to draw them in. And that gets into more like optimization. But those are like the three sort of steps that get us to greater content that I think is more likely, well, that statistically is more likely to earn attention in the news feeds.
So how does this differ for visual social versus text-based social? I know you have several books on the topic of visual social marketing. Are there some nuances that are important to for our listener to understand?
Well, so if a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video's worth like 1,000,000 words, right? So images and videos are like the cornerstone of earning attention because it's just what people's eyes are drawn to. But often we don't use those elements super strategically, right? Like if I had the right image, I could show it up to you and it could make you sad. It could make you happy. It could remind you of your childhood. Like a picture can do all those things in a fraction of a second. And a lot of us don't use images that way. We find like a vaguely related stock photo. And then we're like, okay, well, I'm talking about social media tools and there's a picture of a toolbox. I feel like we're good to go. And, that used to be good enough, but it's not really conveying much, right? So I think what I always say is make your pictures worth 1,000 words, meaning they should be conveying something that's easier, better, more emotional, to like sort of communicate versus your text. And so I think that's, to me, what I see the real key is using your visual assets smartly to convey more than you would just by using text alone.
Yeah, it reminds me of this scene in Mad Men, the TV show. Have you seen that show?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So there's a scene where I actually don't really watch it. I just saw this scene and I thought, wow, that's really powerful. It was where the ad guy was going through all these pictures from childhood, like a slideshow with one of those carousel things. And wow, the people in the room were practically in tears by the end of it. And I just thought, wow, that's some powerful selling right there.
Yeah.
Do you know which scene I'm talking about?
Yeah, I totally remember it. And and I think we don't think of ourselves that way sometimes, right? It's like we get like super functional in a way, right? Where it's like, okay, well, I need an image and it needs to be like professional-ish and kind of about it. And what's really interesting is a client I'm working with, I saw a presentation that LinkedIn had given this client. So they're B2B, right? And LinkedIn was one of the things that to me was most impactful in this presentation was they had a slide up And it was like 10 posts from 10 different companies. They all looked exactly the same and exactly the same as my client. And he was like, you could just swap who posted it and no one could know the difference, because so much of this stuff isn't distinctive, right? Like if it's B2B, we just use pictures, stock photos of like smart people sitting around or typing on computers. I sometimes think that when I look at our, lifestyle imagery compared to our competitors, it's like happy people typing, that's online learning, right? And you lose your distinctiveness sometimes in it too, right? And it really got me thinking about the need to have that sort of distinctive visual image, which is something before only big brands thought about. But now I think we all need to just kind of stand out and build that brand image we want on social.
Yeah, so it's a brand identity, and I love the definition of a brand. I forget who I heard it from, but a brand is a promise delivered.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's also, the thing I think people miss is that when it comes to brand, it's like when I teach personal branding, we say a brand is what people say about you when you leave the room, right? But the same is true with a business brand. It's like, how is it transported without you mapping everything out for someone, right? How can they remember it? Could they identify it, right? And something I saw someone do a while back was like strong versus weak brands. You could take a social post, hide who it's from, like something with no logo, hide who it's from. And for strong brands, immediately, oh, that's Target, that's KFC. But even in the B2B space, if you're in that space and it's well-known brand, you can identify them from their visual look. But, a lot of us aren't really there yet in that level of complexity, I think.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a bit more about B2B and how a B2B brand can succeed in ways that they didn't think possible, that was perhaps relegated only to the B2C world, or perhaps they just didn't understand it was applicable to them too.
So I think what's really interesting to me is that when you think about B2B, this is like where we are totally wide open when it comes to social media, because it's amongst the last industries to go there, right? So it gets me really excited because I think in some spaces it's tricky to stand out of the news feed. It's tricky to earn attention. B2B is totally lagging. So to me, this is the most exciting thing, because there's two things going for B2B. One is most people are not doing it super well. And two is your cost per customer or your profit per customer is so high. You don't need, 1,000 people. And a lot of these ROI discussions, you can just say, look, if you get one person this year, you have 100 times positive return on investment, right? So to me, all the elements are there for it to do well. What I see where B2B struggles is that they feel very limited, primarily to LinkedIn and maybe Google search, although a lot of them don't even do Google search well. Organic or paid, especially organic. Now I would say more are into paid, but really not that many and not that well. So there's so much opportunity. And I think part of it is there's this really narrow mindset, like, oh, we have to use LinkedIn. And a page on LinkedIn, I would give LinkedIn a ton of credit. They launched tons of amazing features over the last year, 2 years. So you can get more visibility organically there. You can get tons. But most B2B businesses just are not using the tools well enough to see that traction. So I think they feel, well, we try LinkedIn, it's not getting so much for us. Maybe we'll run some ads. But really, look, LinkedIn advertises their platform on Facebook. Right? Like literally you get ads for LinkedIn ads on Facebook. You also at the same token get ads for Facebook ads on LinkedIn. So my point is just there's a lot more opportunity there than most are taking advantage of. And I think that's where really I see the opportunity for B2B is that there's so much possibility that most of them just don't unlock because of these pre-existing ideas about where they belong.
So do you see any particular standout examples of B2B marketing, not just on LinkedIn, but across multiple social platforms that really, it's a standout kind of case study of success?
Yeah, I mean, if you look big enterprise, I think General Electric, GE, they do a great job everywhere. Now, they have ginormous resources, right? So like potentially, I don't know if this is true, but like they could even have a TikTok account because they just have so much. Whereas a normal B2B company, that would be like 20th on their priority list. So from enterprise, I would say I think GE does a nice job everywhere, and they're very good at storytelling and finding the stories in their products. I would say from a more like medium-sized type of business, HubSpot does a pretty good job almost everywhere, which makes sense because it's an internet marketing tool. But they tend to do a really good job. And I think, when you look to the online marketing companies, you find two total separate area spaces. Some who like don't have the time or energy to do it well at all, and others who totally nail it. So I think a lot of the digital and social tools do a great job because they know the power that it brings. And so they're often, I think, good kind of aspirational points to look at.
Mm. Can you maybe share an example of great storytelling with regards to a product? Because I think that's really hard for companies to execute on. Like they could tell stories about how they were
Right.
founded, their origin story sort of thing. They could tell
Yeah.
stories about board members or advisors or about, I don't know, their customers, but
Right.
their
But no one
products.
cares about that stuff, right? Like, here's the thing, like, no offense, but like when I post about my own business, like my mom cares, and that's kind of it, right? It's nice that she cares, but like that's not my goal, right? If I want to make my mom happy, I'll send her flowers. So I think with a lot of what you see with a lot of B2B especially is this like very internal content, right? Like about employees, about board members, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things you need to do is like shift your mind to the value for your audience, right? So here's a great example. We launched a video marketing course and I see the copy for it, right? And my big red flag goes up. We, us, anytime first of all, businesses shouldn't refer to themselves like people. You can't emote. We are not excited as a business. Like this is actually super patronizing to people for the most part. So anytime, and if you're using we, us, our, you're showing that it's about you. So you need to, again, it's like what I said with Snickers digging down, I always say it's like why, right? And I have two like toddlers. So I feel like put yourself in their shoes. Oh, but why? But why? And you're like, I've already explained this, but like keep making it deeper, right? So with our video marketing course, it's like instead of just like, we're so excited, this is what we normally would do. We're so excited to launch a video marketing course, and then we would list all the features of it. Instead, step back. Well, why are we excited that we launched that course? Well, because we know it'll help people. Well, why would it help them? Well, they'll get better results from their digital marketing. Why will they get better results from their digital marketing? Because video is the number one form of content and 90% of businesses suck at it. Well, you could do this however many times, but then suddenly the post instead is, are you getting the results you deserve from the number one type of content on social media today? We created this course. Well, I shouldn't say we, but there is a new course, find out how to accelerate your success, right? On the fly, I'm not so good, but the idea is you need to keep positioning it them. And I think when you talk about your product in the sense of the benefits and the problems it solves, that's when you get this magic sauce. So the other example I'll share, I used to work at Procter & Gamble. They make toothpaste, right? How do you sell toothpaste? It's not like, oh, toothpaste, it keeps your teeth clean and your breath won't smell. I mean, a little bit of the breath smelling maybe, right? But normally it's like confidence. It's feeling good at your wedding because your teeth look whiter. It's, feeling like you're not going to offend someone if you get close to them because your breath is stinky. It's not functional. It's about the benefit and the range of benefits. And I think we miss that sometimes because we're just feeling the need to churn out so much content. But really getting, even with a product, how does it help someone? And you can tell a story around how it helped someone. There's so many ways to position that kind of stuff, but you need to get to that benefit and that why to figure that out.
Yeah, that's great. And I am also thinking that in terms of the problem that's the unspoken problem or the internal problem, to use Donald Miller's terminology from the Story Brand SB7 framework and his Building a Story Brand book. So the internal problem is something that people don't speak about. It's kind of under the surface. Like, for example, you might go car shopping. Your external problem is you need a car. But the internal problem, and this is an example I think he pointed out from CarMax, the internal problem for people who are car shopping is dealing with that annoying salesperson who's hard selling them and using all these aggressive tactics and high pressure. Right? So they want to avoid that, and yet nobody thinks about that outwardly. They just think, maybe I should put off this car shopping thing, because they're not looking forward to that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point, right? And to look at the pain points and all of this stuff. Like, I'm working with a global organization right now with their APAC office, and they have all these salespeople. And, they used to just visit the people they needed to sell to, and now they have to go virtual. And what drives me insane is all they want to talk about is how do we make a better webinar? Because they have to do these, it's very event driven how they market. So it's sales calls and events. That's what they've done, for however long. And now that doesn't work with COVID, but all they care about is how do you make better events? And what I have been trying to explain to them is to figure out the answer to that. Like, I can give you 100 gimmicks, right? I can show you, here's a poll app. Use props, have the speaker be really interesting, right? I can tell you 100 tips, but that actually, your problem isn't how to make a better webinar. It's how to get more of your target audience to go to your webinars. And the way you do that is understanding the problem you solve for them, or the problem that the webinar solves for them. Is it that they don't have time? Like, I personally just hate giving my time to a salesperson because they drone on, and there's a tiny part that I care about, right? If there was a medium where I could skip ahead to chapters of the webinar, that would save me time, and maybe I would be more likely to attend. But that's because you have to switch your mindset to how do you benefit me as your target audience. And I think that's what it goes toward, is this internal problem. And I think as marketers, we're not so good at that.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so let's switch topics to algorithms and differences, similarities across these different social platforms, and how we as marketers can leverage the algorithm in our favor.
Okay, so every single digital platform uses algorithms, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. Email marketing does it. It impacts your deliverability. Search engines have done it for many years. I think that's where you started off, right? You were one of the first SEO guys, right? Ads do it. They have quality score where they look at how are people responding to this, and that feeds into it. Like, everything online works off of this. And it all kind of, I feel like at the end of the day, it all comes down to the same stuff. Is it relevant and useful for the target audience, right? And as a marketer, you have two jobs. Is it relevant and useful to the target audience? And is it effectively selling my stuff, right? Because if I just want something everyone looks at, I can be like, free iPads, right? Well, not iPads anymore, but whatever, something. So, but that wouldn't build my brand or sell my products, right? So it's finding that match. But if you look at all of the algorithms and what they basically work on, it's one, the quality of your account in general. So it looks at, okay, when you send stuff, is it generally well received by people or generally not? And so what you see there is 5 bad posts impact your 6th good post. So there's a downside over time, and it's the same with email deliverability, right? Like 5 emails that go into the promotions folder by people, your 6 emails go in there automatically. So same thing with social media. It's based on the previous interest people have had in your account in general. The second thing it generally looks at is the post itself. So then they say, okay, is this post itself doing well? So if it has early traction, that would get it higher on the news feed usually. Also, it will usually look at the type of content you've posted. So none of the social networks admit this, but I think every user would acknowledge that when they launch new types of posts, they tend to give those priority. So for example, right now on LinkedIn, polls are all over my LinkedIn feed. And it's got to be like, they're not that new, but they've done something with their algorithm. And I swear 25% of what I see is polls. LinkedIn also pushes lives towards the top and they do notifications for them. On Facebook, they prioritize videos. Now, the thing about these prioritizations of type of content, some of it is self-serving to the network. Like I think probably they're like, this is a new feature, let's just boost it to get more people used to it. But the second thing is it's based on what people like. So the reason like Facebook's algorithm would be expected to generally promote videos over images is because generally people prefer video content over image content. LinkedIn, what I see with their polls is I know they're feeding them in the algorithm, but so many people are engaging. So it matches what people want really, right? So to me, the best like long-term strategy to beat the algorithms is just to consistently create great stuff that people are interested in. And then from a business standpoint, you need to make sure that it also serves your business. But when you look at the range of social networks, you have Facebook, which has the most aggressive algorithm for business pages. There's pages with hundreds of thousands of people that are getting in the very low hundreds of views. Like that reach rate is horrid. Instagram is somewhere in the middle. Twitter has no notion of business accounts, although they announced they're going to start creating them. And then you have LinkedIn, which is actually really interesting because LinkedIn has discoverability built into their platform. So they kind of feel like if not a lot of people are responding to you, they're going to try and show it to more people who might respond because like they want you to have this validation, I guess. So LinkedIn's a little bit different, but it's all the same kind of stuff, which is just create great stuff. So sometimes I see these hacks that people post where it's like, oh, post 4 images instead of 1 because they like collages. Or I even gave you these, right? Like post polls. But polls are working now. In 3 to 6 months, it'll shock me if those are still getting that same bump. It's like a short-term hack or trick. And those work only in the short term, right? So like the long-term way you win is really with great stuff that people are interested in.
Yeah, to use example or the terminology from Seth Godin, it's being remarkable, right? Worthy of remark. And if
Right.
you don't have that, you're not going to last.
Yeah. Well, and like, what's interesting. So I've consulted with businesses on their social media for like ages now, 15 years, right? And the number one thing that I say to people, and I do feel slightly bad about it, but I'm like, it's just boring. So a lot of the times you read the strategy and you're like, I get why you're going to post this. Oh, this type of content, that sounds great for your target audience. And then you look at it, how it comes to life, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is super boring stuff. And it's a combination of marketing speak, no idea behind it, just not optimized for the platform. But like an example, I had a client years ago and they did marketing for a restaurant and they had a stock photo of 2 wine glasses and it was like, come on down for Wine Wednesday. We'd be really excited to see you. Grab your girlfriends, blah, 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 right? It was like 5 sentences. And I'm like, so I told them their content was boring and they're like, how do we make it interesting? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a creative director, but I do like wine, right? So I'm like, look, you don't need to like spell everything out for people. That makes it super boring. You need to think about like, what about wine is interesting? It could be the price point, right? You could just go half price and make that your headline because people like to save money. If it's about girlfriends, show like happy girls with wine instead of this boring stock photo. It can be, wine. There's like these hysterical wine jokes. Go to Pinterest, right? So I showed them like, I'm like, go to Pinterest and search for wine. Go to Instagram and search for wine. Look at popular stuff about wine and find like an angle to this. It can be useful, right? It could be about explaining the different varieties. So sometimes people think it has to be funny. It doesn't have to be funny. It could be emotional. It could be useful. It could be interesting, like fact. People who drink 3 glasses of wine a day are likely to live to 100. Hashtag not true. But like, whatever, I guess I made that funny. But I'm sure there's real facts that like suggest wine is good for you that you could use, right? So like, I don't know, but we don't often make that effort to make our stuff interesting enough, I guess is kind of my point.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, Pinterest you mentioned, is that a social platform that you consider important these days, or has its importance waned?
It really depends what you're doing. So for, recipes, fashion, online products targeting women, it's absolutely vital for those. But the other thing I would say about Pinterest is like, there is still all sorts of content that does well there. So I'll tell you something really interesting. Earlier this year, so we're mostly B2B. We do some, like, you can buy our certifications and our trainings online, but mostly we sell to businesses. And even consumers, it's like a business need, right? So we consider ourselves B2B. And interestingly, we analyzed all of our traffic and all of our social traffic. I don't think we've like intentionally posted to Instagram for years, like many years, with any kind of real strategy. Maybe we had some light automation 2 years ago. Anyways, Pinterest was our number 2 traffic source with no effort. And it did get me rethinking that platform, because what it does that the other networks don't do is, one, it's full of organic stuff, whereas you struggle with organic on a lot of these other platforms. But two, Pinterest's model is about pushing that traffic to the source where the content comes from to learn more. So I do think it's a bit of a hidden gem in that respect. And the other thing that I see with Pinterest still that is very cool is it shows up really well in organic search. So I was looking, especially when I'm looking, strangely enough, for content, like I was looking for examples of, like, let's say email marketing for IT businesses. And I kid you not, like, these Pinterest boards were all coming up. And I think a lot of people don't realize the SEO impact, because I don't think you see it. Like, I can't think of a LinkedIn post that ranks in search engines. I don't think posts on most networks are ranking, actually. I don't know. You maybe would know. But Pinterest boards rank super well. So I think there's these hidden opportunities. It's just usually more a question with Pinterest of like where it falls on your priority list, really.
Yeah, I've seen pins on Pinterest ranking well too.
Yeah,
Not
it's
just
amazing, and
sports.
nobody seems to think about it, which is like what I kind of love in a way.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good point that you can get LinkedIn profiles to rank in
Yeah,
search, but good luck getting a post to rank it from LinkedIn. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So let's talk a bit about AI. How does AI make things easier and more difficult for the marketer?
So where AI, I think where you see the most of it is in the advertising platforms. And so I should disclose, like, Facebook is a client of ours, but they all work the same way. I just like to use Facebook as an example because it's the most prolific. But but I don't have any inside scoop on Facebook, for the record. So I'm not telling you anything that's not public knowledge. But here's the thing about how the algorithms work. So I go to Facebook to place an ad, right? And the first question Facebook says is, what is your objective? And what I think we still don't do a good enough job about is really choosing that objective strategically, because all of the AI and machine learning are built to get whatever you asked for. So I could take the same post and the first post, or the same post, and the first time I run it as a reach ad. The second time I run the exact same creative as a traffic ad. The reach ad will reach a ton of people and no one will click. And the traffic ad will get a ton of clicks and very low reach. It's the same creative. I could use the same, like, if everything else is the same, creative, targeting, everything, I will get totally different results based on the objective. Because what they're good at doing is saying, this is what you want, we're going to get you exactly what you asked for. And I think marketers struggle with this because they often say, well, I'm doing a reach ad, but surely if the ad was good, I would get traffic. Or like, I also wanted traffic. It's not how advertising works anymore. These algorithms are so sophisticated that they know who does and doesn't click. They know who does and doesn't fill out lead forms. They know so much. And so I think where marketers need to do a better job is really thinking through the strategy. Because if you've not thought through your strategy well enough, you maybe don't choose the right objective. You maybe don't choose the right targeting, right? And all of these choices are optimized by AI, but the AI only works if what you say you want is right. right? Like it's going to get you what you asked for and nothing else. And a lot of times we don't really know what we're asking for. Like even in Facebook, you can run an ad for reach or brand awareness. They sound almost the same. They're not. But a lot of marketers would struggle to really think through which of those two they actually want to have happen. And so this is where I think we need to get, everyone says strategic, 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 like, but what does that mean? What strategic means is that you have an end in mind, and every step along the way, every decision you made is the best possible decision to get what you wanted. Right? Because there's a myriad of good options for a myriad of different objectives, but you need to be laser focused on a single objective and then know enough to make every single decision exactly right. And this is where I think that strategy is often lacking, right? Because even if I think of targeting, I see someone with a $500 a month Facebook budget targeting 50 million people. Like, that's like a shotgun. I mean, I guess maybe shotguns can kill people. I should choose an example I know something about, but like, it's just like spraying something everywhere and hoping something happens. So I kind of think AI, we see it in the ad platforms, we see it in the user experience, of course, right? But what I think it means for marketers is that we just need to be more strategic and more discerning about what we want to be able to get the best results possible.
Yeah. Are there any particular AI-based tools that marketers should use? I know that AI is built into the targeting and the ad generation tools and so forth that are offered by Facebook and Google and so forth. But what about third-party tools? Anything in particular?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing AI creep into everything. So, like, if you use a social media scheduling tool, a good one allows you to schedule across different platforms at different times. A great one can figure out the best time to post a certain type of thing on each social network and do that itself. And there's a handful that are doing that to like varying degrees of good, I would say. But I think there's a lot of other tools trying to get into this space right now. I think in the next handful of years is when we'll start to see it really start to come to fruition. Like chatbots would be the best example. And like, have you ever had a good experience with a chatbot?
No, not me.
Nobody has. Like I had one. KLM has like an awesome chatbot, but they're huge and spending obscene amounts of money, right? So many marketers have these stupid chatbots on their plans, but they're so horrid and they're like, it's a longer, more difficult way to achieve something, right? We took the potential and we made it suck. And I think, and chatbots, good ones, should be built on AI and machine learning, but I think we're not there yet and being able to apply that stuff so well. So where I see it is in these little optimizations. I think you see a ton of it in ad platforms, right? Like now, if you look at advertising, you have campaign budget optimization instead of ad set optimization. Google's done the same thing, right? You can optimize for an objective at the campaign level instead of setting unique budgets within your keyword groups. So we're seeing like AI options being offered, but I think honestly, a lot of marketers are super resistant to this stuff because they all think they're smarter. And I mean, it's just as hard for me to believe you're smarter than math. Like you could win some, but I think you're overall not going to beat the algorithms for the most part, or the like AI. So that's where I think it's coming along. And you see these little spots where people are like, oh yeah, that would be easier for me to let it do this stuff. Even if you think about one of the easiest things when you do a Facebook ad, right? The best practice for many years has been upload 4 or 5 different images and the algorithm will show the right image to the right person. So oftentimes what you find is if I upload 5 images, we are not so smart. We think of it as binary. We think of this is the best, so turn off the other ones. That's why we'll never be smarter than machines, because the truth is this is the best for most people, but ad 2 is still the best for some people. And that's why you still see some deliveries in it. And good AI knows this, whereas we're binary, right? So even I had a big debate with someone about ad placements because he was like, Instagram isn't performing as well as Facebook. We need to turn off Instagram. And it's like, no, the budget will go to where the results are. It's smarter than you, because if you turn off Instagram, you assume no one on Instagram is going to click, right? The algorithm knows some people will. And so they still can like work it out that way. And so I actually think the problem is more humans. Like we don't trust these algorithms and we're obsessed with control. So once we can, I mean, maybe it sounds crazy that I'm saying like trust robots, but like even with an automatic scheduler, most social media managers, I think, would not feel so comfortable loading their calendar and just saying, yeah, algorithms decide when these things ought to post. I don't know many people that would do it. I don't know many clients that could be easily sold on this. So I think the humans are the problem, really, because the technology is there. We just suck at using it.
Yeah. So going back to this idea of picking your objective, let's say it's reach or brand awareness, how do you have the right distinctions in order to, or the right information or understanding to choose the right objectives so that the AI can optimize for that and give you the best result?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. This is why you won't hopefully be replaced by a robot, because this is where you have to use your brain and creative thinking, right? Same with finding the user problem. It's hard. And I know we're in an age where everyone just wants these easy answers, but like that's not my deal. Like I show you how to do stuff the real way that works. If you want to learn these hacky things, yeah, go watch some YouTube videos, and it probably won't work well in the long run, because like to get real results is hard. And I think anyone who's actually done it knows this, but this get rich quick hacky idea feels so appealing. So the long story, or the short story to my rant, is that you really have to think deeply and carefully about your marketing strategy. And I think not a lot of us have done it, or have done it well enough. So we often will say, well, our goal is awareness, but it's awareness can be a goal. Awareness can be a super valid goal, but usually it's just a cop out that we have no real plan behind what we're doing, right? So again, let's say my goal really is awareness. That could be a totally valid goal. If I have $500 to spend and my target audience is 50 million people, you know how you could also spend that money well? I was looking to see if I had matches. You could literally burn it, and that would probably be just as effective. Because like reaching random 50 million people once a year, not even, like this is not how you grow a business, right? You need to really think, okay, if I want to grow awareness, who do I really want to grow awareness with? What is the goal of that awareness? And just refine. And I think it's hard for us to make decisions oftentimes because we think and that's why we get nowhere, right? We define our audiences way too big, for example, because, well, they could buy it, could be an okay idea, but then you end up not focused enough and you end up wasting your money, I think.
Yeah. So it kind of sounds similar to what you were saying earlier about figure out the why, and then the why of that why, and then the why of that why. Yeah.
Be the annoying toddler in the room. That should be my new book, right? Be the annoying toddler in the room to get better marketing. But no, but I think you just got to really think it through. And also there's nuance to it, right? Because there's context behind it. So like if I'm Coca-Cola and I'm marketing cinnamon Coke, which by the way is a real thing and it's horrible, never buy it. But if I'm seriously, have you ever tried it? It's like, no. I don't know why it exists, right? Because why would you? It's horrible. But if I'm marketing cinnamon Coke, other than hating my life, the point is my target audience is actually probably 70% of the population, right? So I want these big audiences. I want high frequency. So it's a combination of my business goal, my budget, and like my market maturity, right? Like all these things kind of are coming together because Coke has a budget to reach 70% of the people. I could have a product that is, well, ideally more appealing than cinnamon Coke, but that 70% of the population could buy. But if I use that same strategy, I don't have the budget to reach that many people, right? So then I'm just wasting my energy. So a lot of it comes down to sort of like this strategy and nuance where we have to say, well, okay, what's realistic for what I'm trying to do, right? A real example I can share with you is I worked with a company that was selling yoga pants, and their targeting was people interested in health and fitness Any guesses what percent of the US population, according to Facebook, is interested in health and fitness? Any guess?
70%.
Close. Like 60%. So that's not targeting, right? Like
Yeah.
it's the same as not targeting because everyone's vaguely interested in it and you haven't really identified your real target and the problem you're solving for them. And as a small business, like they could reach, 0.01%. So I think we just need to be more strategic when we don't have the budgets to be reaching everyone, which no one does except these huge brands. And it's hard. It's hard to be discerning and say, no, I'm not going to target these people because these people are more important to me.
Yeah. So if you had a small budget to spend, let's say it's $2,000 a month, would you spend it on creating, would you spend most of it on creating remarkable content like infographics and things like that? Or would you spend most of it on the advertising because it costs so much to do advertising? You might only have a few $100s left over to spend on the actual creative.
Yeah, good question. Here's what I think about creative. For most small and medium businesses, we're at this amazing DIY stage where you can DIY your way to great stuff. This was not the case 5 or 10 years ago, but now, like, you can make a great video on your phone. I mean, there's TV commercials made on phones, literally. So I would, as a small business, I would try and find ways to DIY my content because with Canva, with video editing tools, if you have any internal resources, it's much more cost effective to do that stuff in-house. And what we find too is social media doesn't require the same polish of your creative that it used to. People prefer a little the like more unfiltered, uncut stuff. Well, maybe heavily filtered, but authentic-ish, right? Whatever that means. But like, because everyone like loves these Instagram filters where you end up looking like a mutant. But you can create content yourself. If it was me, I think I would focus on a handful of good creatives that I can have where I can run evergreen ads around them, right? So if I think of my business, if I boosted every post for, let's say, $50, I could blow through $500 or $1,000 and I could claim it's for awareness, but it's just like lazy marketing, right? There's no real point to it. Instead, if I tested, 5 or 10 different ad creatives based on benefits, I can test different target audiences. And I think what you see now, the businesses that are winning from an ad standpoint, they have an evergreen strategy, where essentially what you do is you spend the time up front, test, learn, test, learn, test, learn. You get your winners, and then you just optimize on those as you go, and you have a really sustainable long-term strategy. So I think too many people still think in this mindset of social media of like, I need new stuff, I need new stuff. And that's not really what matters so much anymore. It's more about getting the elements right, which often requires some testing, and then you have something that you can kind of repeat and scale, and that's where you would get more profits.
Yeah, awesome. And is there a particular tracking methodology or tool or process that you would recommend in terms of measuring your success tangibly, like with regards to ROI, with regards to profit and ROAS and everything else?
I think it gets tricky because if you focus too much on measurable return on ROI, you miss like the bigger picture and you'll spend all your money like bottom of funnel, right? Like I could run a conversion ad that's focused on getting people to maybe sign up for my free trial, and I can feel really good about my ROI, but that's not also like the sustainable way to grow a business in the long run. And there was actually a research report that Facebook just came out with maybe 2 months ago, and they analyzed, I don't know, X number of campaigns across all different industries. And what they found, which surprised me to be honest, was that top of funnel ads, awareness, reach ads, actually drove more short-term sales than conversion focused ads. And you wouldn't think that because I kept saying the AI is smarter than you, it knows. But when you run a conversion ad, it's about a trackable person buying in a certain window, right? Which is just such a small segment of like behavior. But if you focus on your benefits, your why, your problem, being seen as the best at something, then that's going to get you stuff in the long run, right? So I think from a KPI standpoint, you need to track things, but I actually think it's a huge mistake to focus too much on these directly measurable conversions or sales or even leads, because I think marketers who've been at it for a long time inherently know the longer term value. Internet marketers are less good at that, in my opinion, because they've seen the crack of the immediate sales and they're like hooked on it. One of my first clients that I got from a search conference, I met with them and I was like, okay, blah, blah, blah. Like, let's talk about your strategy. And they were like, well, the first thing you need to know is we don't believe in branding. I'm like, okay. Right. But that was the mindset, was like, get the clicks, convert the clicks. That's all we care about. So I think, to me, it's not an either or, it's maybe an and a balance. It does come down to resources, but a nice balanced strategy is a little more full funnel, where you have some things you do for awareness, some things you do for nurturing, and some things you do for conversions, right? Because like, take me being on your podcast. What's the ROI on this? Right? If you're listening, go and buy something, and then I know it's great. No, but like, what is my ROI on being here? It's a nurturing strategy. It's not reach. If I just wanted to reach a bunch of people, there's ways that I can do that in less of my time. Right? And I don't know how many people listen. Maybe it's way more than I think, but like, either way,
at
in
least
under
10.
an hour, right? At least 10. So let's say it's 100 people, right? In under an hour, I could reach way more people than that by putting a post on LinkedIn, for example, right? If I spent an hour optimizing a LinkedIn post, it would reach 50,000 people. But how deep is that impact, right? It's awareness. To me, this kind of stuff, this is nurturing. My goal here is that people think I'm smart. They want to learn more about what I do and how I could help them. And over time, the conversion takes care of itself. If I used an ROAS mindset, I would come on this and I'd be like selling at you super hard, right? I'd be like, oh, and by the way, we have a free trial, by the way. And it wouldn't actually appeal to a lot of people, except someone who's already maybe really far down the funnel. So I think if you just think of yourself as a consumer or what makes sense to you, usually you can see that this full funnel approach is actually more logical. And you got to kind of have the experience to know which things serve which purpose for you, and then track the right things for that purpose.
Yep. All right. Good stuff. And speaking of free trial, I think we should send our listener to some great resources and things. And if it includes the free trial, that would be, I think, quite valuable for some of our listeners. So, yeah, how do they find you? How do they learn from you?
Yeah.
Get access to your tools and books and get those free trials.
Yeah. So, I mean, we do digital marketing training. We have the broadest and deepest online library that you'll find. So the easiest way to get started is with a free trial. If you go to bootcampdigital.com/AAP, you'll get our all access pass page. And the only way to sign up is with a free trial, because we want to make sure that you want it before you give us any money. So that's how you can sign up for a free trial. We also offer certifications if you prefer to read books. Now I'm like hunting through my desk. But my latest book, Digital Marketing That Actually Works, literally it speaks for itself, but it kind of takes the hype and gimmicks out of it all and lays out what are the big picture things to focus on. Because going back to our first conversation about like what's changed in social media, I feel like everyone's so hung up sometimes on TikTok and this and that. But like, if somebody asks you how to grow your business online, you're going to tell them all the same stuff you'd have told them 10 years ago, right? Generally speaking, like get a good website, optimize for search engines, consider some online ads, be active in social media. And so that's what this really focuses on, is like the best practices for the foundations and how to add them to your strategy.
Awesome. Krista, this was fabulous. Thank you so much. And thank you, listener. Now, please apply some of this in your business or in your job and be a hero in your company and for your target audience. And we'll catch you on the next episode. This is Stephan Spencer signing off.